What is up, all you fellow and future Shadow Darklings? My name's James. This is Living for Crits, and this is the third part of a 4 or more part video essay series about the classes of Shadowdark. And today we'll be covering the Thief. And I feel very strongly like I have really attempted to be a thief here with this look. I was actually like the whole pirate thing. Pirates are thieves, right? I almost put this hat on thinking maybe like a steampunky thief, but Shadowdark is not steampunk. It's Shadowdark. It's like classic old school like D&D RPGing like from the old days, right? In aesthetic. So I don't think a steampunk thing would work there. Again, as I said in the last two of these, I'm in a limited amount of stuff and swag that I can use for costuming, and just not quite having the desire to go out and go too crazy. So I have this, and it's just nothing a Pirates of the Caribbean hoodie, so it counts. This is a thief's outfit. Plus, my hair is very thiefy in that I haven't combed it today, and it's just sticking out. And that's what thieves do. They just show up and they do their thing, right? That's their job. They don't have to get prepared for it. They're already ready. So here we go. Now, in second edition days of D&D, when back in the old days, back in the 90s, if I wasn't playing a wizard, I was probably playing a bard, to be fair. And if I wasn't playing a bard, I was probably playing a multi-class thief, as I discussed 2 shows ago about Leaf Smallblade, my halfling fighter thief. So I do feel I've seen enough thieves at the table. I know enough about the thief class in Shadowdark. I can talk about it, and that's what we're going to do. So this series is really designed for new players in tabletop RPGing, in the tabletop RPG space, and specifically those who are delving into Shadowdark, that amazing game that just kickstarted a few months ago and should be in print here shortly, but that you can get the PDF too. Follow the links below if you want to go get a copy of the PDF now, and start exploring the game. This coming Friday be our 14th session of our Shadowdark campaign. So I've seen this game inside and out at this point. We're at 4th level, having an amazing time, and we did have 2 thieves in our party. Until one of our thieves licked something in the game that was an ooze that turned her character into a warlock. So now we have 1 thief in the party, my son Cooper's thief. But I have spent a lot of time with thieves in Shadowdark. As always, I did with the other 2 videos, the fighter video and the wizard video, both out. If there's something I don't cover, or you think I should a design or build option for thieves that you would go for that I haven't talked about, please contribute in the comments below. So let's start. So you want to be a thief. When I have played a thief in those times that I've done it, I've often looked for ways to multi-class the character into other options. That was something available in 2nd edition and 3rd edition, that you wouldn't just be, you could be just a thief, but you could also be a multi-class fighter thief or mage thief, something like that. But the reason I always did it was I liked having access to those thief skills, and even having just a touch of thieving ability was great in sticky situations, especially outside of combat, when you have to do exploration, or you have to be persuasive and talk amongst NPCs, and you want to have an edge. I mean, you want to pick their pockets. You want to be able to, sneak your way out of an engagement without having to rely on magic or brawn. The fact of being just a pure thief allows you to really specialize in those things, but it doesn't mean your character is one-dimensional. I would say if you want to play a thief in Shadowdark, it's because you want to lurk in the shadows. You want to strike hard, strike fast, and slip away and be out of the situation. You want to be the scout of the group. You're okay with being on point and playing lookout for traps and obstacles. And you really want to shine in the exploration portion of the game. This really is, if combat is the fighter's domain, exploration really is the thieves' domain. Not that they can't interchange, but you're going to do it better. And finally, you are a problem solver, eager to use whatever is at your disposal to get the job done, but it's not going to be magic, at least not for a while, and even then, only magical items. So if we look at the class, the thief class in Shadowdark, and we just kind of go through and break it down, for a class that's going to need to get in a tussle from time to time, your hit points kind of stink. You only have 1d4 hit points. So without a good constitution, or unless you're a dwarf, you're not going to soak much damage before you go down. For weapons, it's pretty limited. Club, crossbow, dagger, short bow, and short sword. So you have 5 weapons you can use. And it's critically important that you look at each of these weapons for what they are and for the options that they play. Okay, because each one's, with the exception of the club, I think the club is kind of like a throwaway. I don't see any reason to be using a club unless that's all you can get your hands on and you're stuck with it. But since you can kind of find them anywhere, you can always break a chair leg off and you have a club. If you're out of weapons, you can make a club really quick. I usually allow club as the improvised weapon for any class. So if you were without a weapon and you go up a tree branch, boom, club. So it's really talking about the dagger, the short bow, the short sword, and the crossbow, right? So the crossbow, the dagger, and the short bow, they're all going to use dexterity for your attacks. So if you've picked thief because you are, you have a 16 dexterity, that +3 bonus to attack is going to help you with the dagger, the short bow, and the crossbow. The club and the short sword are going to use strength. Okay, so the club, so let's say your strength is decent. Again, I would never opt for the club, but for the short sword, if you have a good strength, having a D6 in damage rather than a D4 in damage, it's going to be crucial. The crossbow has a D6 in damage compared to the short bow's D4. However, the crossbow, you need to save your move action to reload your weapon. You are not going to be able to be very mobile on the field. That's a sniper's weapon, which comes into play when you want to use sneak attack later and have that advantage of have the bonus of using the crossbow. A dagger is it's tough. I love what Dungeon Crawl Classics did with the dagger, making it a D10 weapon when you backstab with it. However, I don't know how realistic that is, except for just making a dagger be a good option, because it's such a thief has a dagger. A dagger is a great backup weapon. It costs a gold piece. That's one benefit. So you can carry 7 of them for the same cost as a short sword. And why would you want to carry a bunch of them? Well, you can throw them. So it can be a ranged weapon or a melee weapon. So it's very versatile, although they each take up a gear slot. So I wouldn't carry 7 daggers either. But that's the dagger's advantage. It could be thrown. It could be used in melee. It's cheap. It's easy to shove in a boot. That's why you'd want to have one. And I would always advise that a thief should always have at least 1 dagger on them, just to have that one weapon that they could throw, or they could go into melee with, or if they want to hide it on themselves. I think the GM would be much more likely to hide a dagger, or I guess a club, than to hide a short sword, or especially a crossbow. When it comes to armor, thieves are very limited in just leather armor or mithril chainmail. That's a big swing. That's 10 gold pieces for one, or 240 gold pieces for the other. So mithril armor, it's effectively having leather armor. It means you don't get disadvantage on stealth or swim checks, but it also means you have the means to pay for it. And there's no option for chainmail, which I found a little interesting. I mean, as a thief, I don't know, I'd consider buying chainmail to have my advantage of sneaking cancel out my disadvantage of sneaking wearing the chainmail. I don't know. That's something to think about, right? But yeah, you want to be saving up for that mithril chainmail pretty quick. So when you are buying your gear, I did mention before the backstabbing, get ready to backstab, because when you hit a creature that's unaware of you, you do an additional die of damage. So figure that you're going to have as a dagger at first level, you're doing 2d4 damage with it if you backstab with it. Okay. And you get an additional die for half of your total level. So if you're level 2, that's an additional die. Level 4, that's an additional 2 dice. Doesn't compound, but if, using the dagger example, a first level thief does 2d4 damage with a dagger backstab, 3d4 at second, 4d4 at fourth level, okay? And that's because a dagger is a D4 weapon. If you're using a short sword to backstab it, it's a D6 weapon. Because just because your word is stab or backstab doesn't mean it needs to be a dagger backstabbing. It could be a short sword backstabbing, or it could be a crossbow or a bow. The rules just say if you hit a creature unaware of your attack, you get to do an additional weapon die and damage at first level. Okay, so that's one thing right there off the bat. That a reason why you need to consider what weapon you're going to be carrying with you. Do you want to be mobile and not worry about having to reload that crossbow? Because you're not going to want to carry 2 loaded crossbows. That's just ridiculous. But you could do it, I guess. I guess you could do it. Or do you want to use the quicker daggers and short bows in the field? Up to you. Cooper, my son, uses a crossbow. So his character is just a crossbow assassin sniper, and it's very effective with that. But the rest of the party has been built around him being this artillery shell that fires off. At this point, with his bonuses and everything, it's like a 4 or 5d6 attack he does. So it's pretty brutal. All right. So thievery is the core of the thief class. It's in the name, right? It's a thief, not a rogue, okay? It's important to break down this ability into 2 parts. So I'm going to quote some things here because even I did not realize the magnitude of this ability until I read it again during my recent read-through of the entire core book. So to quote Kelsey Dion and Shadowdark, under the thief, you are adept at thieving skills and have the necessary tools of the trade secreted on your person. They take up no gear slots, end quote. That means you don't need to worry about having lockpicks or special climbing claws or a mask like Darkman, Liam Neeson, Darkman, takes a effing elephant, to cover your face. Your class ability is that you have access to all those already and can perform the second part can perform the thievery, right? So that's the benefit, is you have all this stuff. So don't look at your sheet, where do I buy lockpicks? You have lockpicks. And if you for some reason lose them, part of your class allows you to come up with them. It's what you're doing, it's just like the same way that a wizard, has spell components and stuff in this game. I would imagine they're like, when they're casting a spell, they're biting the head off of a spider and they're, putting sticky webbing in their mouth or whatever to climb. They're doing all of that, but the game isn't making you kind of go down to that minutia. It's the same with lockpicks. It can be very frustrating as a thief in other RPGs that, you've got a character who's already not great at picking locks, and now you have to go off and you have to spend 30 gold pieces on lockpicks. What the hell? So you have the gear on you that lets you do this. All right, it's part of the class, and you become trained, which means you have advantage for climbing, sneaking and hiding, applying disguises, finding and disabling traps, and delicate tasks such as picking pockets and opening locks. So essentially, thief skills. So rather than saying you have a +2 to this, a +4 to that, or having a skill system that is, in points or percentiles, in Shadowdark, you just have advantage to do all of these things. And this is based on your whatever stat is associated with it. I wouldn't say it's always dexterity. I don't think the game is very clear on this, so I thought I would be clear in how I do thief skills. I let the situation derive what ability I'm asking for the roll on. So if it's climbing, I would say strength or dexterity makes the most sense. Now, thieves are going to have a high dexterity, so that's going to be a requirement. And if you look at rock climbers and folks that are like, professional climbers, you can't say it's not like a strength, dexterity, and often constitution requirement for those. That kind of activity definitely requires all three. So I would say there might be a chance you might want to ask for a climbing to be a constitution-based roll, which means you're rolling your constitution modifier. You just have advantage for it. Sneaking and hiding, I would say these are clearly dexterity, unless you're being forced to hide somewhere uncomfortable. Like if you say, I'm going to hide in the water, I would make you roll a con check, not a dex check. Still with advantage. For applying disguises, I think this could be intelligence or charisma. Intelligence if you are not having to interact with anyone, if you're just trying to like look like a statue or something like that. And charisma if someone is trying to interact with you. Finding and disabling traps, that's dexterity, intelligence, or wisdom. I would almost always let the player have their choice of which way they want to disarm the trap. They want to do it because their fingers, are the deftness of their fingers, that they know about the traps, or they just have such a deep-rooted understanding of how how traps work. I think it's fair to say that in these instances, the thief will probably have a higher dexterity, but if your thief has a higher intelligence, let them use that, to their advantage. And then delicate tasks is pickpocketing or opening locks. That's dexterity, maybe intelligence with the locks. I want to take a step back here for a second. I script all this stuff out. Like, not script, but I have show notes I put together back from my Glowburn days for my podcasting. But I want to step away and say, like, thieves and thieves' skills are one of the are a big thing for me, and one of the reasons why I had an issue with some of the other, D&D retro clones and old school games that are out there. Like, I never liked percentile-based thieves' skills. It's one of the reasons why I really never played a thief class, pure thief, in 2nd edition. I always felt like those percentiles, once you added them up, even when you added all the 2nd edition modifications, the fact that dwarves had bonuses to opening locks and finding traps, or elves at moving silently and hiding shadows, and different bonuses based on your dexterity skill, I always felt you'd still only come up with like a 50-50 shot that you were going to pull off that check. What is it? There's some of those things in there that are like pickpockets is like 20%, 25%. What kind of crap thief are you? And sure, the DM could come up with modifiers, say, well, you're going to be able to roll, an extra 20% added on there, 30%, 40%. But that puts more pressure on the GM, I think, in instances where maybe you want to move through something pretty quickly. So it was one of the things I liked about 3rd edition when it came out, that it just made it basic skill checks. I really liked about 3rd edition and DCC, and I really like how in Shadowdark it's just a very, very simple, elegant solution. I have no idea how 5th edition did it, because I didn't play 5th edition more than just for a summer. But if it's the same way, great. It's something I liked. But I in recent years, a few folks have like thrown old school essentials across my desk to say, you tried this? And honestly, it comes down to I have a real hard brain lock when it comes to thieves' skills being percentiles, also with percentiles being nothing like the other mechanics of the game. Here, roll a d20 for everything but percentile dice. And I just didn't like how saving throws worked. I just fortitude, reflex, will seems so much cleaner than like rod, staff, and wand. Why? I don't get it. Anyway, of any that's going to get me negative feedback or comments, you can put it below. It's not going to change my mind. All right, thief talents. So now that you've got all of your thief skills together, you have some talents you can roll as you progress in level that are going to, modify what we just discussed. You can get bonuses to strength, dexterity, or charisma. You might gain a bonus to melee and ranged attacks. Your backstabs might do an additional die of damage. That's a brutal one. If you get that one enough times, you're just going to be a machine with backstabbing. And finally, you can get advantage on initiative rolls. That's if you roll a 2. If you roll like Snake Eyes, that's always the coolest. I feel the coolest talent you can get. So having advantage on initiative rolls is pretty powerful, especially in combat, especially if you want to use that high initiative to like go into stealth mode right away. Just slip away out into darkness if you can. Drop the torch and sneak off if you can. I think it's very, very deadly for goblins, especially. You already can't, get surprised as a goblin, but to have with the keen senses, but to have then advantage on initiative rolls, that's pretty cool. Okay, I've discussed in all the videos so far, variants of the classes that you can explore out the gate. Because, you could just try to say, hey, I'm going to play just a regular thief. But I think it limits, I think it's limiting if you just think all thieves are the same. They're not. And you do have some build options, even if, depending on how you roll, right? For the very first I'm going to discuss, the assassin might not be great if you have a really crappy strength and constitution. But if you have a decent of both, or at least middling, go for it. So I have 3 builds here that you can try at first level. It's the assassin, the scout, and the charlatan. So the assassins are all about hiding and backstabbing. And they're about using the higher damage weapons. So you're going to want to use the short sword and melee to have the D6 in damage instead of the D4, and the crossbow in ranged combat. So there's sort of like there's 2 assassin builds. There's like the melee assassin and there's the sniper, right? You're going to want to save up for Mithril Chain. Put that stuff on layaway at the local village Kmart right away. Get the countdown going at 240 gold pieces. I would say the half-orc is your go-to for melee assassins, gaining a +1 to hit and damage with those types of weapons. And then the elf is going to get a +1 to ranged attacks. They make for an excellent sniper. Again, Ronaldo the Thief, Cooper's Thief, is a elven, I would say, assassin build. A human with additional talents means more chances to get the +1 die of damage for backstab. So it is conceivable for a human thief to roll additional backstab damage. That's a roll of a 3 to a 5, I think, on the talent roll. If they roll it twice, they walk into the game doing +3 dice of damage at first level. So can you get it? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not. But you could get it. It's possible. It's not. It's more probable than rolling a bunch of 18s for your stats, right? So anyway, I think any of those ancestries work well. The scout's more the build I would play as a thief, I think. Sure, you have all these great thieving abilities, but you're on a quest for glory and riches, and it's all about searching, delving, and survivability. So expect to spend lots of time in the front of the party, but be prepared to get out of harm's way quickly. So unless you have a high strength or bag of holding, you want to save your gear slots. You don't want to worry about getting bolted down with a crossbow, leather armor, daggers galore, short swords. No. You want a crowbar, grappling hooks, and ropes, mirrors, poles. A lantern's a fantastic investment because it means you are the light source in the front of the party until you see something bad. Put the lamp down and go hide if you want to. Maybe talk to your GM about spending a couple extra gold pieces to put the hood on the lantern to douse it, if you will, by keeping it lit. Caltrops are, yes, you could spend several gold pieces to fight in the front of the party, or you could spend 5 silver, drop a bag of those, drop down that bag of D4s, those spikes, and run away so that the fighters can jump forward and hopefully not jump on your caltrops. I think that Dwarven Scouts have that benefit of being able to take lots of hits, because of their hit points, or at least more hits. Having the ability to roll advantage on your hit points, and having the extra hit points at first level, it's a huge, it's a game changer. I think a really fun build with this would be a Dwarven Thief with a 14 dex, 14 con. You're gonna end up with possibly 6 to 8 hit points at first level if you're fortunate, and that's going to rival the fighter in the party possibly. And you can take that first fall. That first fall into the pit trap is free. Uh, I think Goblin Scouts never being surprised are also very advantageous to a group. Figure a Goblin Scout with that 10-foot pole out in the front, just being very careful and being very willing to sneak away if something bad happens, go for it. All right, so the third build, and I've tried to do this with each of these, with the wizard and with the fighter, of a build that doesn't just have to be in the dungeon. But the charlatan. So you've rolled a thief with a high charisma. Make sure those great looks and that clever tongue works for you. So applying disguises, picking pockets, opening locks mean that you're going to make so much money bilking everyone in town when the party's resting. So when you've left the dungeon and you're back at the keep on the Shadowfell or wherever you're at keep on the Borderlands, that is when you're doing your best. Just, taking as much money as you can from everyone in town, buying a mirror at the local store and then I don't know, selling it back to them, or stealing a mirror then selling it back to them, things like that. So I think that's where the class is great. For weapons, just take a short bow. You can attack and move. It does a d4 damage, but at range, and that's not a lot of damage, but technically if you hit at least once in a while, it means it qualifies you for being in combat, which gets you a share of the treasure. You're going to make your money when it comes down to gambling, impersonating the mayor, gaining access to town resources, and later, if one of the party members, gets some great treasure, just steal it off them, and now you have the great treasure. So I think when it comes down to ancestries with this, you aren't going to want to be in that boss battle, maybe up in front. So a halfling's invisibility keeps you back away from the trouble for at least 3 rounds. All right, so spending money. I think that, like the fighter, the thief is kind of dependent on their starting gold to see what they can buy. So leather armor is almost always a must. It's 10 gold pieces. You want the extra bonus to your HP. It's the only way of your AC. It's the only way you're going to get it. Crossbows are 8 gold pieces, a total investment of 9 when you buy quarrels or bolts. Short bows are slightly cheaper at 6 gold pieces, so 7 all in with 20 arrows. Short swords are 7 gold pieces. And you're going to want a full crawling kit to start, probably. So you need about 30 gold pieces to be comfortable as a thief. If you only roll 10 gold pieces, if you get the lowest roll possible, just snake eyes on your gold roll, which means 10 gold pieces, I'd say a crawling kit and 3 daggers and call it a day. That gives you a ranged attack a couple times in combat. It gives you a melee attack. You'll get leather armor later, and just hope your dexterity is good. And if it doesn't, roll a new character after you die. Play the character, but after you die, make a new character. So I have some tips in playing Thieves at the Table. The very first one is, if you want your share of the treasure, be prepared to do your job. And your job is being a thief. You're going to be out in front scouting. You're going to be opening locks and removing traps. These are hazards of the thief lifestyle. If you don't want to be on point as the scout, maybe consider a different class. Maybe if you have a high dex, maybe consider being a fighter and just being a ranged fighter. Because if you're going to be the person in the game that doesn't want to explore, it doesn't make a lot of sense in why you're going to be a thief. But just remember that, the treasures that you find, they're going to end up in your hands first. You pick the locks, right? You open the doors. You're the first one on the scene when the gold is in front of you. That means you're going to have dibs. You're going to have first access to it. Whether it's actually happens, or it's something that and the player everyone agrees to, or whether you're pilfering it. You open up a treasure chest and you see there's a lot of emeralds and gold and jewels in there. You can always say to the GM, hey, I'm gonna roll my thieving ability to pocket the largest emerald before I share it with the party. Boom, now you're ahead of the game. Now you're earning your way towards the mithril chainmail. I would say it's wise when you're outside of combat to seek out thieves and assassins guilds. There could be benefits to having access to these types of organizations. And if your GM hasn't mentioned them before, and if you don't express interest in them, you'll never see them. So bring them up as opportunities. Maybe you create, the lore of the Thieves Guild in your GM's world. It comes out of your interest in it. But I think that interaction with Thieves Guilds, it's just the Lankmar mind of mine, maybe. But I think there's so many great role playing opportunities, plus potential work for the rest of the party. Don't miss out on potentially playing the lawful thief. Chaotic and neutral thieves seem natural. The chaotic thief is just wild, stealing whatever they want. The neutral thief, they're there. They might break a few laws, but don't skip the opportunity to be lawful, especially if you like gangster shows or movies. I think the perfect lawful thief would be like Tony Soprano. So think of that. I mean, he followed a code, a rule of laws. They were just his laws. That's kind of the whole idea around like the old D&D trope of like the lawful evil thief. Like you're a gang lord, and maybe you're a first level gang lord. You're like Chris Moltisanti, right? In the first season of The Sopranos. Maybe don't end up like Chris Moltisanti. Like, I think he only makes to level 7. I know spoilers, but I mean, this show's been out for a while. But I mean, Tony Soprano's a level 10 lawful thief for sure. And then finally, seek out magic items that will make you a legend at the table. You do not have access to spells. But it doesn't mean that you won't need magic. You're going to want equipment and gear that complement your abilities. Boots of the cat, bracers of archery, the night cloak armor, short sword of the thief, etc. Just like the fighter, if you don't find a way to attain magical items by 4th level or higher, you're going to start getting eclipsed by the wizard and cleric at the table. So take what you need to be the ultimate thieving badass. So, in conclusion, playing a thief means you'll never have downtime at the table. You'll be actively involved in every aspect of the game, from stealthy combat to exploration to parlaying with townsfolk to steal them out of all of their earnings for the year. But ultimately, these are just my thoughts on the thief, and I'd love to hear yours. How would you build and play a thief in Shadowdark, or a thief or rogue in any other old school inspired tabletop role-playing game? Please comment below. And thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful week in gaming.